My name is Robert. I knew I was done trying to fix my marriage the moment my wife looked me in the eye over dinner and said, "I'm in love with someone else." Right then, something inside me shut off completely. I didn't question her. I didn't ask why. I simply nodded, called the waiter, paid the bill, and walked out of that restaurant, leaving her behind, speechless. She didn't see it coming. But honestly, neither did I, until that very second. Looking back now, what still surprises me is how quietly everything fell apart. Our marriage didn't end in shouting or slamming doors. It faded, slowly, silently, like a wall slowly losing its color over years of neglect. One day, you wake up and realize everything's dull, lifeless. We were still sharing a home, sitting at the same table, sleeping side by side. But we weren't a couple anymore. The intimacy had dissolved over time, piece by piece. We barely spoke. And when we did, it was about mundane things. The electricity bill, groceries, her meetings. No real conversations. No connection. There were no arguments either. Not because things were perfect, far from it, but because neither of us had the energy to care enough to fight. That's the worst kind of silence. It's not calm, it's emptiness. A slow kind of grief that no one talks about. I had become numb to the emotional distance. And yet, I remember a time when I was everything to her. When I believed she'd choose me, lean on me. We used to be in love, deeply. But slowly, the bond we had worn thin until one day it just snapped. And neither of us tried to fix it. So no, her confession at dinner wasn't the beginning of the end. It was just the moment I stopped pretending there was anything left to salvage. When I first met Susan, I was in my late 20s, grounded, employed at a reputable agrochemical firm, and confident in my path. Susan was vibrant and full of purpose. She didn't just have big dreams, she had concrete plans. From our earliest conversations, she talked passionately about building a wellness brand. She had ideas for her product line, branding, even what kind of customer experience she wanted to create. She had vision, and she made me believe in it, too. But she also confided in me about how hard it was turning that vision into something real. She tried to launch, reached out for support, experimented with small product runs, but nothing had really worked. She lacked capital, and it frustrated her deeply. Now, I'm not someone who casually hands over money. I've always been cautious with my savings. But that night, as I listened to her pour her heart out, something shifted. I decided to help. I gave her $50,000 from my own savings. Not because I expected anything in return, but because I believed in her. I believed in what she was building. The expression on her face, I still remember it. She was stunned. Emotional. She kept thanking me, over and over, saying no one had ever done something like that for her before. She promised she wouldn't forget it. That moment felt meaningful. She looked at me with something more than affection. It was admiration. And that meant everything to me. She didn't waste that opportunity. She registered the business properly, put legal protections in place, and started running things seriously. On paper, it was a financial investment. But to me, it was personal. I wasn't just funding a company. I was backing the woman I loved. I saw it as a step toward our shared future. With that boost, her business took off. She grew quickly, hired a team, revamped her branding, expanded her services, ran focused marketing campaigns. Every week brought something new. I loved seeing her dream take shape. I was genuinely proud. I stood by her through all of it, cheering her on. There's a unique kind of joy that comes from seeing someone you love grow into who they're meant to be. It made me feel like I was a part of her success. Her victories felt like ours. Not long after her business became stable, we got married. I was optimistic. I believed we were building something real together, a shared life, driven by ambition and mutual respect. The early days were steady. She used to tell me I was her quiet source of strength. I believed we had each other's backs. We weren't flawless, but we had alignment, or so I thought. Then things started shifting. As her company gained momentum, so did the changes in our relationship. But I kept telling myself, this is what growth looks like. And I kept showing up, even as she stopped noticing. Long workdays, stress, and nights spent away from home. She said it was all temporary, just a phase to help establish her career. But that phase never ended. The late nights became the norm. Sometimes I'd walk into our quiet home after work and feel the emptiness. When she finally walked through the door, she'd offer a tired smile and mutter, "Today was insane." I'd nod, let it go, and hope things would eventually change. But with time, I noticed more than just her exhaustion. She was investing herself in everything except me. Her style transformed, more refined, more expensive. The circle of people around her changed too. The friends we once shared were replaced by unfamiliar names, clients, coworkers, people I never met or even heard of. I stayed silent. I didn't want conflict, and a part of me believed that if I stayed patient, she'd realize the distance growing between us and return. I took on more at home, buried myself in my job when she wasn't around. I kept reminding myself that growth sometimes meant sacrifice, and if I just held on, we'd get back to the way things were. But 4 years into our marriage, that hope was harder to hold on to. The connection we once had faded. No heated arguments, just cold indifference. We weren't communicating. We were simply coexisting. I clung to the belief that this was a rough patch. I told myself we could fix it, because I had given so much of myself already. And sometimes, when you've held something together for so long, it's almost impossible to admit when it's already broken. Then came the evening that shifted everything. I got home earlier than usual. Instead of staying late at the office or avoiding traffic, I decided to head back a bit sooner. I parked quietly and entered through the side door. As I neared the house, I heard her voice, "Susan," on the back patio. She was on the phone, her tone light and playful, even flirtatious. I paused just behind the wall, listening to be sure I wasn't jumping to conclusions. But after a minute, it was clear. This wasn't a work call, and it certainly wasn't innocent. I stepped into view and called her name. She jumped, startled, then looked at me, then her phone. Without a word, she ended the call. I asked calmly, "Who were you talking to?" She didn't answer. Instead, she got defensive, accusing me of sneaking up on her and questioning my intentions. I didn't argue. I just stood there, absorbing the moment. The silence that followed said more than any excuse could. She knew what I had heard. I saw the guilt in her eyes, even as she tried to deflect. From that moment on, something shifted between us. We barely interacted. Left early, came home late. Conversations were stiff, mechanical. And I couldn't stop replaying that phone call in my mind. Despite everything, I wasn't ready to walk away. I still held on to the idea that maybe we could fix things. Maybe she was dealing with something I didn't understand. 2 months passed, filled with avoidance and silence. Eventually, I decided to try one last effort. I asked her to have dinner with me. Told her we needed to talk to reconnect. After a brief pause, she agreed. That gave me hope. I chose a restaurant we used to love, hoping the familiarity might remind us of the love we once shared. The drive there was quiet. She kept glancing at her phone, responding to messages, even smiling now and then. I noticed, but said nothing, not wanting to spoil the evening with assumptions. At the restaurant, it was obvious. Her attention was elsewhere. The phone stayed on the table, and her eyes barely met mine. I tried to make conversation, asked about her day, about work. I brought up an old memory from one of our past visits there. She gave short, detached answers. No laughter, no real engagement. Eventually, I stopped trying. I watched her scrolling through her phone while I sat across from her, feeling like an extra in her life. That's when I spoke. I leaned forward and told her I didn't invite her out for silence. I said I wanted us to talk about everything, about the space growing between us. I told her I missed her, missed who we were. I said I still wanted to find a way back if she did too. Every word I spoke was honest. I hoped that moment would be the start of something new. A small crack in the wall we'd built. A sign that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. But I never got to see that sign. I could sense it. The words she was about to say would change everything. It wasn't just a conversation. It was the final nail in something I hadn't wanted to admit was already dead. She leaned forward, her voice soft, like she was ashamed. Then she said it. "I'm in love with someone else." I didn't flinch. I didn't ask who, or how long it had been going on, or even why. I simply sat there, stared at her for a moment and replied, Good to know. Not because I had nothing to say, there were 1,000 things racing through my mind, but suddenly none of it mattered. Her decision wasn't made that night. It had been made long before. That sentence didn't start a new chapter. It ended the whole story. I called for the check, paid it in full, and left. No final words, no dramatic scene, just quiet pain buried beneath each step I took out of that restaurant. I didn't look back. That night was restless. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, lost in thoughts that spiraled endlessly. Was I blind to the signs? Had I been naive for believing in us? Had all the space and patience I gave her been nothing but wasted energy? Eventually, sleep came barely. Morning brought no relief, only the crushing realization that our life together had truly ended. Susan moved out that same day. I didn't need confirmation. It was clear she went to him. And that was fine. At least now I saw things for what they were. Her choice was final. Mine had to be too. With my head still aching, I picked up the phone and called my longtime lawyer. We'd handled legal stuff before, but this was different. I told him I needed a divorce attorney. He paused, then asked, "Are you sure?" I told him I'd never been more certain. I wasn't looking for a drawn-out fight, but I also wasn't going to walk away empty-handed. I had invested $50,000 into her business, not out of obligation but out of love. And now that love had collapsed, I had to see it through a different lens, business. If the marriage was over, so was that investment. My lawyer didn't hesitate. He brought in a divorce specialist and passed the financial matter to someone from his team. I told them to move quickly and they did. Within days, Susan had both the divorce papers and legal notice demanding the return of my money. A few days later, I got a call from a number I didn't know. The man on the other end introduced himself, and I instantly knew who he was. The man Susan left me for. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He got right to the point, asking me not to go through with the investment withdrawal. Claimed the business couldn't survive it. Asked for more time. I stopped him right there. I made it clear he was never to contact me again. I warned him once and only once. If he reached out again, he'd see a version of me he wasn't prepared for. He tried to reason, but I'd already hung up. Then I blocked him. That was the last time we spoke. The divorce process wasn't simple. I won't pretend it was. Like many others, I experienced the system leaning in her favor. But two things worked to my advantage. We had no children, and she'd moved out before anything legal had begun. That limited her claims significantly. I stayed sharp, communicated only through my legal team, and remained focused. In the end, I got exactly what I aimed for, including my $50,000 back with interest. Letting her keep that would have been like handing a reward to betrayal. Now when I think of Susan, there's no hate, but there's no love either. That version of her, the one I once loved, is gone. What remained wasn't worthy of the life I offered. So I closed the door, locked it behind me, and walked forward, with dignity intact.